I think they're just not happy with themselves where they are today. And therefore, to get ahead, they'll screw other people over. They'll make up excuses. I'm not satisfied in my marriage. I'm not satisfied with my health. I'm not satisfied with this. But the truth is they're not satisfied with themselves. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. Tim, what's happening, man?
I love how that's stuck. It's so cool.
It's not going anywhere either. Oh, you turned your video off. Come on.
I was speaking, I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you. I was speaking to Amelia or recording something the other day, or she was listening to a part. I don't know how it came about, but she heard Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. And she's like, is that what you call yourself? I'm like, no, it's what Doug calls me. And, you know, they put this whole like cheery music on the podcast and it's great. And she was cringing, like, you don't call yourself that, surely. How dare you?
Calls me, yep. And every day
you should call me. You should call me that.
Too funny.
How she should intro me to her friends. Hey, this is my partner, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews.
I think a lot of us guys would like that. I always joke with my wife something similar. She doesn't do it, though. But anyway, Tim, what I wanted to bring to the table today as a conversation topic is one that I do see not quite often, but it's happened to me recently, and it's happened in the past. And I'm sure a lot of business owners can relate to this. In fact, there's a gentleman well-known in his industry in the brotherhood, which we speak about so often, who's going through something similar. So it happens to us business owners. But what happened was I was discussing a business partnership, and not in a legal sense, but in the sense that one of my companies would come in and service this other business, kind of almost like a white label type situation. We would come in, we would provide the foundation, the groundwork for their company. They would resell the services, bundle with something that they're doing. So it would be a win-win-win situation, right? A win for my company, a win for his company, and a win for the clients. So I get onto a video call with him and some people on his team. And Tim, I can tell almost right away after the pleasantries that they were starting to pick my brain to see if they could run this themselves, right? So they started asking more detail-oriented questions that they wouldn't need to know. How would you run this? How would you fulfill this? How would you navigate this hurdle? How would you navigate that hurdle? How would you, set up this whole system, et cetera, et cetera. So after about 20 minutes into the conversation, it became evident to me in my eyes that this guy and his team were there to poach the ideas and see if they could obviously increase their income by taking the concept that my team and I brought to the table and running it with themselves. Have you ever had this experience?
Yeah, I think it happened when I partnered with you, right?
Yes, you did take my ideas. This is true. So I am speaking exactly about you.
Yeah, I thought it was about time we had this conversation. Have I had this experience? Similar, yeah. I mean, when I was growing Fitness for Mum in the early days, so we teamed up with a company that was called, it was in the child, I won't name the company, but it was in the child, the kind of baby space, let's just call it, I don't know what industry it's called, baby space, whatever. And obviously our company was Fitness for Mum back then, so our market was pregnant and postnatal women, so they complemented really well. And what actually ended up happening was I was essentially brought in to sit in on a lot of the negotiations for this company and with this company with different strategic partnerships, which was, on one side, it was great because I was sat in on meetings with some very high-profile people, people that were celebrities and TV personalities, and the guy that set up Phones for You, and some very, very wealthy and well-to-do people. It was a great training ground, to hold my own and understand negotiation. And you always say that I like to negotiate. Well, this is where I learned. And what ended up happening there was basically a lot of the ideas, it wasn't so much a white labeling. Well, it wasn't anything to do with white labeling, actually. But a lot of the ideas and strategies that I'd used and had worked, I was basically being I didn't realize it at the time either, being brought in to implement them with this company. And I wasn't doing the implementing, but the CEO of the company was in the meetings as well. So obviously, with her being involved in the conversation and working with her in the partnership, it just so happened that for the most part, I'll say I was being taken advantage of, but it takes two, right? It takes one to allow it and one to instigate it. But back then, for me, I never used to maintain my boundaries, and I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. 2 great podcast episodes we've done in the past: maintain and create boundaries, don't ruffle any feathers. So I used to kind of let myself, in some respects, get pushed around in business. Not to the point whereby I got totally taken advantage of, but like I said, I was a lot younger then, had a lot less experience. I was, trusted the wrong people, let's say. So nowadays, this sometimes happens when people approach me for certain things, but definitely not as much as not like it used to.
Yeah, well, so the reason I bring this up, and we also have again, I'll use this. There's a guy that we both know in the Brotherhood who is selling his company for $65 million, roughly thereabouts. And same thing, a company came in to acquire them and it all looked good. And it turned out the company was really there to steal his customers. Right now he's in a legal battle, and which obviously sucks. So the question that I want to bring to the table isn't just, does it suck to get screwed over or have somebody manipulate, but what is going on with the level of integrity at the person who is doing the screwing over, right? Who is a person on the other side of the fence? How do you think they are justifying in their own mind, in their own head, doing those actions that they're doing?
Oh, I don't think they care. I think all that matters to them, in my opinion, is to make more money, because, we talk about there being one destination, 2 paths: the path of power, the path of force. For the most part, those people on the path of force derive their significance and power, although it's false power, from being able to manipulate people and make money and take from others and compete and put people, it's almost like a survivalist mentality whereby I've got to rob from you, Doug, in order for me to have more, because there's only so much for everybody. And if I don't do that, then, I'm going to say go without, but it's not even go without. Some people just take so much pride in that. I use the word power, but I don't even think it's power. It's ego, isn't it? But there's another word. False power is the best way for me to put it, because underneath that bravado of manipulation is really insecurity. If you're actually to dig deep and scratch it, usually those kinds of people have a lot of broken relationships around them, have a lot of surface level relationships around them, don't often let many people in. Yeah, sure, they might make money, but usually the shame that goes with a lot of the actions eats away at them. And no matter how much money they make, it never usually lands. They never actually feel fulfilled or successful, partly because they're numb, and they've got to become numb in order to survive with who they are on a day-to-day basis. So life is very bleak for those people, even though they have money. They're very much living in black and white versus living in color. It's not a great place to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm going to also add on that I think they justify things. And when I say justify, I think what they're doing is also coming in this situation, coming in and saying, well, geez, I think I could probably handle these things. I just need a few more details. And then that's all fair game, right? It's business. Business is all fair game, right? It's not, you always hear this, this old kind of thought process, or in the movies anyway, like, hey, it's not personal, it's business. Right. And I think that that is something that really stunts the growth of a lot of the men. And we see this when men come through a program, and there's a few of them that come through the program and they've done this in the past. And to your point, really what they're trying to do is they're trying to get ahead. They don't have an identity, and they've created just this tidal wave of destruction behind them. And when they look up, there's no one around, or at least not very many people are around. And the ones that are around them are in a codependent relationship with them. And therefore, that relationship has no solid structure. And they justify in their heads how they could do this and how they can get away with this and how they're going to move forward. And I think you nailed it. The nail on the head, so to speak, Tim, is it's a scarcity mindset. I have to take from you in order for me to get ahead, right? In order for me to make money, you need to get screwed. It can't be a win-win situation or a way that everybody can get ahead.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to ask you a question. Do you ever feel like something's just missing? Like there's something more out there and you just can't put your finger on it? I totally get it. Go over right now to thepowerfulman.com/freedom to discover the system that other businessmen just like you are using. We've included 10 case studies, 10 men just like you who have found the solution and have found their way on their path. And we want to share that with you. Go over to thepowerfulman.com/freedom right away. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, and it's, it's complete rubbish, right? Because it's not, it's business. It's just business. It's not personal. Yeah, it is. It's a personal reflection of you. You're the one that's screwing the other person over. It's a reflection of what's going on within you and how you operate. And we all know that, we speak about the 5 territories, and when the men come to us, they've got it upside down. They've got it back to front. Business is first, then it's money. Then if there's anything left, relationships. Then if there's anything left at that point, they invest it into their health and in themselves. But usually relationships, health, and self get barely anything. Whereas the right way in the 5 territories is to have self at the bottom and then health above that and then relationships. Because when you're looking after yourself and you are in a really place of true power, a place of true knowing where life is effortless, life flows through you, you make decisions quickly, you take inspired action, your leadership is powerful, whereby people just want to work for you. Like one guy in the Brotherhood went into work and his staff like, go home, we don't need you, take some time off. Like that is leadership. Is creating such a culture there that he invests in his people and he loves them so much and loves on them so much that they want to grow his business for him. They are bought into the vision. Now that kind of leadership cannot take place when you're coming from a place of false power, operating from separation, from competition, from fear, from greed, from the 5 agonies. It just doesn't happen. And we know that every territory touches one another. So business it's not just, hey, it's business, it's not personal, because if that's how you're operating in business, screwing people over without integrity, then my bet is that you're also looking at other women and, contemplating cheating on your wife and going on porn instead of connecting with your wife and skipping out on workouts and eating rubbish food and wasting time on social media and staying up late and drinking too much and probably taking drugs. And, listen, I've spoken to hundreds of men by this point, and I hear very similar stories day in and day out. And that isn't to berate the men. I'm not speaking from opinion here. I'm speaking from experience of working with hundreds of men. You too, right? And we see the pattern day in, day out. So, if you are in a position where you're operating like this in business, then I'd highly encourage you to take a look at where else this is showing up in your life. It reminds me of a story of one guy that I spoke with some time ago. He owns one of the UK's largest recruitment companies, hundreds of millions. And he would have investors that would fly out to him, or business partners, whatever. And he'd take them out on a night out. And he'd end up going to strip clubs and doing coke and drinking loads. And at home, he's got a wife and a daughter. It's like, what's all that about? You're going to strip clubs and taking coke and drinking yourself into oblivion because that's what you've got to do in order to entertain these clients. I don't think it is. That's a choice that you're making. And no wonder why he was on the phone to me saying how no matter what he achieved, how much money he had or whatever, he just wasn't satisfied. His marriage wasn't working because he's doing all these things to disconnect himself from his life and from his marriage. So how is he ever going to be able to be present with his wife and his daughter in the way that he wants or even feel any sort of fulfillment? It's just not going to happen.
No, I mean, he's completely obviously disconnected from himself. And I think that's really the heart of the issue, right? Is if you're not happy with yourself, who you truly are, and I think it comes back to what we said in a previous episode, is actually knowing who you are. You know, we do an exercise on day 2 at the Alpha Reset, which I'm not going to share the exercise because I think it needs to be a surprise, where men get a glimpse of the real man they are. And we've talked about this before. And it's one of my favorite quotes to share. And I can't remember who said it originally, but the definition of hell is meeting the man you could have been in life and not stepping up to that. And I think a lot of times with these guys, the guy that you mentioned, Tim, and certainly the guy that I'm thinking of right now, or at least the company, and I'm extrapolating this. I don't know it to be true, but I've been in this situation enough times to kind of see the formula, for it. It's like a baker, right? You see the recipe going in, you know what's going to be coming out of the oven. I think they're just not happy with themselves where they are today. And therefore, to get ahead, they'll screw other people over. They'll make up excuses. I'm not satisfied in my marriage. I'm not satisfied with my health. I'm not satisfied with this. But the truth is they're not satisfied with themselves.
That's okay as well. There's no shame in that. But I think, there's such a culture, especially within businessmen who are achievers, that are so used to pushing down their fear and overcoming that inner inertia, that to actually stop and ask for help and admit when there's something that isn't working, and as it pertains to you. I mean, so often guys invest so easily in their businesses, right? We see it time and time again, guys that come through the program that have invested hundreds of thousands in developing the business, sales systems, hiring people, marketing systems, whatever. They happily invest there because it's almost like, I guess it's like upgrading your car, right? You're going to invest in something that gives you some significance. But then, in the process of that, they build this almost, I'll say facade. They build this impression of how their life is as a result. And it it buries them. Because what then happens is when they do hit any road bumps personally within themselves, it really has them question, well, can I actually raise my hand and ask for help? Because then I'm weak or I'm admitting defeat. How are people going to perceive me? People are not going to see me as the strong leader that they do now. Things are going to change. But the reality is, unless they actually take the time and energy and effort, money, to invest in themselves as easily as they're doing in the business, because it's so important, then that abyss, that dark hole that they enter, just becomes deeper and darker and more slippery and more lonely. And it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. And it just takes asking for help, whether it, whoever, us, the people. And what often happens is your business will grow exponentially as well as a result of you leveling up. If you've got your business to a certain point by operating probably about 10%, 20% of what you're capable of, I ask guys when I speak with them, Doug, on the clarity calls, okay, so, what percentage do you think you're currently operating at? And I haven't had one guy say above 20%. And these are guys that are running 7-8-figure businesses. So just imagine what's possible. Well, we know what's possible. We see it, right? But just for the listener, just imagine what's possible when you actually do work on yourself as well as your business. things fly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you think about it again, but going back to this case scenario, I didn't know this person very well, but had they reached out to me, Tim, and said, hey, Doug, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Do you have any advice or input? I would have gladly gave them, kind of the roadmap and said, hey, yeah, here's what I would do. Here's how to do it. I would have gladly done that. I do that all the time for people as coaching or mentoring. I don't necessarily think I have all the answers, but here's how I would do it. But because they went about it in the way that they did, and it was just clear how they were doing it, they burned a bridge with me. And that bridge, won't be built back, at least not easily, right? I'm not going to say never, but it's kind of like, hey, you see a zebra and his stripes. Do the zebra ever change their stripes, and how do they work? So unless that person does serious development on themselves, our business relationship's over, the way I look at it. But had they actually been okay with themselves, secure enough, and just simply asked and talked to me about it, I would have been right there with them in step, helping them build this out for their company and their future.
Well, there you go. It just takes honesty, doesn't it? Honesty just, is such a gateway.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's a gateway to getting what you want, and getting clarity and insight is so good. So, gentlemen, if you're out there and you've been in my shoes, where you've had somebody obviously lack integrity, or what I would define as integrity, and try to steal or cheat you in some way, shape, or form, just remember, it's not you, right? Obviously, you want to, as Tim said, go back and listen to the episode on boundaries. It does take two. There are certain things you can put in place to prevent this from happening to you in the future, or just like I did, as soon as you recognize it, you end the call and you end your deliverables that you're going to give to that person, and you just make a mental note. But if you're also the person that's listening to this and you're like, crap, they're kind of describing me, and you're finding yourself justifying your actions, you're finding yourself justifying what you did and how you did it, just remember that justification is an excuse. And that excuse is really you just hiding from what you're doing and being honest. So it's time to get real, honest, and raw with yourself and get some clarity around what you're doing. Guys, that's it for us in another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate and review, and we will see you next week.